Yo, what's the deal, family? Welcome back to another episode on Sips of Success podcast. This is episode 24. We are getting through it. Wow. It's crazy. Feels good, though.
Yes.
What's going on?
Nothing. I'm a little tired today. 25 weeks as of today. And woof, I'm like hanging on by a thread. But we're here.
We're here. It's actually like this podcast is actually like right now. I wouldn't say live,
day
but
of.
day of.
Basically live.
So yeah, life been lifing.
Yeah. What are we sipping on?
We are sipping on watermelon refreshers.
This is like our favorite juice.
Yeah, one of our favorite juices.
It's so good. It's fresh juice.
Yeah. So if you don't like drinking water and you really don't get enough water, you can, I don't know, get your water from like, cucumber, watermelon, lime, and stuff like that. That's a good way to hydrate yourself. And hopefully it's a pick-me-up for Aaron.
Yeah, because first of all, my allergies have been
this
horrible.
is a bad allergy season.
Second of all,
As you wipe your nose.
I'm 25 weeks pregnant, so I'm already like getting bigger and like more just it's a little bit more difficult to like do certain things. But I'm still trying to like stay active. We went on a 4-mile walk yesterday, or 3.5-mile walk.
How are you feeling after that?
I was tired. But I like doing stuff because it makes me feel better like while I'm doing it. Yeah. And then I'll crash a little bit. But then I'm fine, But I feel like now I'm not sleeping that good.
Well, we haven't slept well in general. I feel like because we had been on the move and
we were traveling.
Like, I feel like we haven't caught like a routine wave in like a month.
Yeah, I agree. So it's just been like a lot, and then planning for the baby and planning for maternity leave and like all the things. It's just like, whew.
Basement still isn't
done. So we've got a lot going on over here.
Yeah.
But it's all good things. It's just kind of a little bit tiring. So, okay. So what are we talking about today?
We are talking about things. These are some questions that we kind of asked before marriage, but we found it on 365marriage.com. Just some, I don't know, refreshers just to, also refresh where we are now, but also kind of compare to some of the things that we may have talked about or we have not. So we're just going to answer some questions that we wrote down and gauge
where we're at
and where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, hey, everybody's calling me, man. Come on now.
Don't they know we're filming?
You gotta know. First question is, if you can change anything about the way you were raised, what would it be and why?
We talk a lot about our upbringing, especially because we're about to have a baby.
Yeah.
We've also talked a lot about it before we were like pregnant because we wanted to just kind of pinpoint some of those things that were great in our childhoods and also like could have been better in our childhoods. Just, to help us understand why we also are the way we are, you know?
But also I would say to kind of start training ourselves to be the parent that we would like to be.
Yeah, and
versus
not necessarily
waiting until the baby is here and then we're really just figuring it out as we go.
For sure.
Which we already going to experience some part of that, but I'd rather have some type of, I guess, mindset going into it to like how we would like to parent.
Yeah, I feel like people hate when we say stuff like that. But it's the same thing, the same way we treated marriage. We really talked about a lot of stuff, and I think it helps, like you said, that mindset going in, so that way when things do come up, you at least have some type of thought process around that thing.
Yeah.
I also think talking about upbringing helps you not necessarily compare yourself. Like, we don't want to compare the way we parent to how our parents parented.
Right.
We want our parenting to just be a full-on reflection of our values and like how we want our daughter to be raised and our future kids that we, haven't conceived yet.
Hopefully that's soon next.
But to answer the question, I would say, I think the biggest thing is just like a little more transparency. Like, my parents did a great job at like talking to us about things, you know, like my mom always says like we were way more open and we let you guys do way more stuff than like they were able to do growing up. And I understand and respect that. But I still feel like we just grew up in such a time where like technology was starting to be introduced and like you just start figuring more out faster.
Right.
And I do feel like to some extent like there were just things that I didn't know about my parents that now that I'm an adult, I'm like, oh, you know, like you're really just another person, you know, like you're really just another person experiencing life, like going through your own set of challenges, like you're a human. And I feel like when you're young, at least for me, like you look at your parents and you just think they're the most put together, you know, have it all figured out parents. Yeah. And I know that my parents protected us from a lot of things that they may have been going through, whether that's financially, whether that's rocky bursts in their marriage or whatever. But I do think like as kids, you still sense things and it's like, and this is not to say like my parents, they're happily married, but like, like growing up, it's like you just know when things are kind of going on and your parents are trying to
hide them parents from you. Well, I don't know if they realize it or not, but kids typically know more than what their parents would like to either accept or realize.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, and we talked about it. I talked about it with my mom after we had the sex episode. And my mom opened up to me about things that she's never talked to me about before. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I was really happy that, you know, we got to share that, and me and my dad. Like after that episode, my parents both called. Because also like, I just think that there's a certain level of transparency in my family that just that's not the norm, you know? And I have friends who are just like, they talk with their parents about certain things. And I'm just like, oh my God, I thought my parents were open until I started hearing kind of how some of my other friends interacted with their parents. And I'm like, you tell your mom that, or you say your dad tells you this kind of stuff or whatever. Right. And it's not like gross stuff. It's just like a level of transparency that I just didn't experience. Yeah. And I think that that's, you know, you don't really realize it until you're an adult and you can really understand like your parents as people and not just as parents.
Right.
So I think that would be one thing that I would have loved to have just a little bit more like openness, because I think that also impacts how we communicate and how relationships, like just other relationships in my life and in my siblings' life, like my sister's life, like that impacts how we interact, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
For me, it's kind of the same, but different. I think mine is more so directed at my dad. And obviously I don't say too much until hopefully one day we can have a conversation that kind of just gets us to where I would like us to be in terms of not just the parent-child relationship, but just the man and man that happens to have a son and that dynamic or whatever. But I would just say that, but I would say more so just having a real relationship, not one that is, I guess, feeding off what you said. It's more authentic. Not that it wasn't, but you're in the act of trying to protect your children, you're not really protecting them. You're sometimes hurting them more than you would like to accept or realize. So I would say for me, just parents in general, just like the protecting or what you think is protecting isn't always protecting. So that's what I would say I would change, is like what the meaning of protection means per se.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of time, I think again, like for me, just about to become a dad, these are things that I've told Aaron since even before I started telling anybody. But you know, just having a relationship with both of your parents, one, but for me specifically with my dad, which I don't necessarily have like a great one. And he would say, some people would think, and this is the first time I'm ever saying this like outwardly, but people would think like, oh, we have the best. Cause I'm not about to say we don't, I guess. Right. Like I'm not gonna put him on the spot. And even though this is like, I guess, kinda in a way, and he ain't watching, so. But just
This will be the episode.
Right, nah, he not tech savvy, but no, just and if he does, maybe this would be the one time because I've tried over the years, just over the last 10 years, trying to, I guess, make something, but I realized that's not really necessarily my job.
Yeah.
And I've said some crazy, disrespectful things before. Well, at least on his end, he said, "Oh, you should have never said that to me like that." And just kind of piggybacking off what you said, it's like, well, this is just, it's not acceptable because you think it's not acceptable, but I didn't say anything actually disrespectful. Yeah. It's just more so you have to realize that I'm looking for an answer and that you're basically part of the problem that is creating me to look for an answer for my concerns or whatever. So that I would say that's mine. It's just kind of changing the idea of what protection means or the meaning of what protection means, because I think a lot of parents excuse themselves by saying we were just trying to protect you and we were just doing this and we didn't tell you this because blah blah blah. But at the same time, at one point you had to learn. And the reality is your kids are going to learn. Like a lot of stuff I had to learn really on my own. And it sometimes sucks when I gotta feel like he's kind of taking credit for some stuff I definitely didn't learn from him. Right. So I would say that's my biggest thing.
I have a follow-up question that kind of goes with this and then we can move on. But what is your view on kids, quote unquote, back talking? Because I think that I do feel like there are a lot of things that go unsaid from the child to the parent because it can, especially in the Black family, because it can be viewed as disrespectful and not necessarily allowing your children to just fully express how they're feeling. So it's like a lot of times you as a child can't even like fully share. Like you if you're a teenager, you can't fully articulate like exactly how you feel in the most like articulate way. You know what I mean? Yeah. So sometimes it can come across as disrespectful. How do you feel about like kids maybe challenging their parents in a way that in our upbringing would have been seen as disrespectful?
It was disrespectful.
It was disrespectful. And it's like, I don't think we'll necessarily be those super like, what is it called? Like soft parenting or gentle parenting in a way that I feel like the stereotypical gentle parenting is viewed as. I think that there is still value in how we were raised to some, like in that way. But what do you feel about like kids talking back?
I feel like talking back is, the word talking back is what is or phrase is used as, it is like deemed disrespectful. But I actually look forward to my kids thinking. Like if they think about maybe something we've said and they like come back and say, no, this don't make sense. I'm gonna be more impressed than like, nah, what I say goes. I feel like I went through enough of what I said goes, and I understand how that made me feel and how that affected me. So no, I think I don't think it would be disrespectful for them to come back and say, no, I'm gonna hear them out. Like I'm training myself now to, even like with us, like I hear you out before I just be like, no, I'm right. I'm just right.
I think the biggest thing is like the child looks at their parents as a parent and the parent looks at their child as their child. And and at what point do you just look at each other as two people with two opinions who are different? Like, I think we're going to probably be like trying to find that balance because there is a level of respect that you want your kids to show you. But I also think like, especially your kids are going to be older for a lot longer than they're little. And I think that that's like a way that you start to have that honesty built into your relationship and it doesn't feel so like
awkward. Or like we're hiding something. That's
exactly.
just something that I want to avoid. But I think too, I think the respect conversation is different than them talking back or having an opinion on a simple life situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't know. I feel like that's fair. I feel like what isn't fair is when it's just kind of like, no, like that's not necessarily fair. Now there are some things I'm sure we'll say like no, and it's not a right time for an explanation, or you just can't have the candy. I don't have an explanation. I'm just not buying the candy right now. I guess I don't know. Like that's not. But I feel like too, and my hopes is that the no for them may not be the same as how it affected us, because I feel like it was a whole bunch of no's growing up, a no's that were, you know, needed an explanation. So when it was a no to Candy, we like, well, dang, you know. So
Yeah.
I will hope that because they understand the dynamic of in which we are, I guess, communicating back to them or back to her, because we only have one coming.
Yeah.
But, you know what I'm saying? I feel like
Yeah.
that would be the comfort in, even for them to kind of understand, like, oh yeah, I just don't need this right now. Versus, I don't know when I can have whatever it is I'm asking for.
Yeah.
You know?
I will say that my parents definitely weren't like a because I said so type. Like, we were definitely not
My dad definitely
raised
was.
like that.
My
Like,
mom
they
wasn't,
always pretty much explained to us. We're also girls, so like girls always need an
little bit more.
explanation.
But also a little
Not
bit more.
always, but like, yeah.
I feel like girls are a little bit more, for I guess a lack of a better word, spoiled. Like,
Yeah.
like girls aren't getting as hard. Yeah, they're not as hard as what a boy experiences in general.
Yeah.
But so I know we have some differences in terms of what that looks like. But because my sister experienced some of the same things you experienced.
Yeah.
Not with my mom though. I mean, she's just. I mean, I'm a mama's boy and I'm her guy. So
Yeah.
like, I never really done nothing wrong in her eyes. Per se. But no, with my dad, it was definitely like, no, you better do what I say, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Type thing.
Okay.
But not to extent. I think when I got old enough, I think that's why we bumped heads, is because I just wasn't accepting it no more.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like, you know, back when I was like little, I looked at him as like a hero. So even when he said no, I didn't look at it the same as when I started to learn life on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But yeah.
Okay. What's the next question?
Next question is, when one of us is not in the mood for sex, what should be communicated so neither of us feel rejected? Backstory on this question: we have talked about sex before marriage, like before we got married, and I think we've talked about it on one of these episodes before. But I was in this men's group, and a lot of guys just, whoo, boy, oh my God, dang, y'all seem like y'all miserable in y'all marriages, and specifically they ain't getting no booty, no cheeks, no nothing. God dang. So I just straight up asked Aaron one day, I was like, so even like right now in this phase we're in, like, you know, about to have a baby, becoming parents, this is when they really started to experience it. I was just asked her, I was like, so when you have a baby, are you going to be like mainly baby, or like, are we going to have some type of balance? Because I'm in this group and these guys seem like they ain't getting no love. I'm not even talking about just sex either. I'm talking about they just not getting no attention, period.
Yeah.
So I asked her before. So what would you say to that question?
And I think that's good to ask, even if, like, as a woman, you can say, I want it to be balanced. But I think just from you voicing that concern so early on, it helped me to think about that, like, really early on, you know?
Yeah.
And before we even were thinking about having kids, that was something that was always kind of in the back of my mind. We've also had talks about like not having enough sex since we've been married. Yeah. And, you know, and then sometimes it'd be like, oh, I'm happy with how much sex we're having. Or like, I don't know. The sex thing, I feel like it's kind of an ongoing thing. And now that I'm pregnant, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Or do you feel, how are you feeling?
Oh, we haven't had that conversation yet, huh?
Yeah, we haven't really had that conversation. It's been like
but I feel like it's different just because like you're pregnant, so it's like I don't really have a real
expectation.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect. It's kind of like cool, bet.
Well, like the first trimester was just
that was
the
worst ever, bro. Like,
well, first of all, we couldn't for like the first few weeks because I started spotting, so that was a thing.
Then that turned into a whole other 2 months.
That turned into just like after my spotting stopped and my doctor was like, "Oh, you're fine. Like you can have sex again."
But she was not fine.
Then I got nauseous and like super tired, and it was just like, oh my goodness, it was rough. It was rough.
And she was sleepy. It was like
I was just always sleepy. So tired. And
it was more so tired. I want to say you were just nauseous.
And then one night you were actually tired, and I was like, "Babe," and you were like, "Oh yes."
hey, you gotta get it in when you can.
Oh my gosh, you were like, "Hey, I can't turn down no opportunities at this point.
And I was like sleep. I was on sleep. I was asleep. I was actually like knocked out.
But yeah, it's just like you go through so many different phases with sex. And I don't even remember what the question is. This is pregnancy brain. What was it?
Me. I mean, I remember, but we started talking about that. When one of us is not in the mood for sex, what should be communicated so neither of us feels rejected?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't think we ever like.
Yeah,
we never really be like
that issue, but
we never really be like no.
But I will say I think to better I don't even think both of us have to necessarily answer this, but I think the best way that I can put it is that because of like for me, I never had a sex talk with nobody. So like just like anything else, I've been figuring this thing out like for the past, I don't know, 8 years basically, or 7 years, however long. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, like it's like kind of one of those things where I had to get comfortable with it in general, and she really has to get comfortable with it. Like me and her had a conversation some years ago before we were married, and it was kind of like, well, basically I went from nothing to something. Yeah. And it's not that one day I knew that I basically wouldn't or would have sex. It was more so the fact that I didn't realize that I didn't have any way to prepare for the moment. Mm-hmm. And that moment was like a long moment. It was more so like it was a hard to transition into like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing now, basically. Yeah. And not so much for me in a way, only because it was exciting.
Yeah, like our reactions were different.
Were different. I think for me, it's just because like I'm around other people who are having sex. It's like it seems like this great thing, and then for her, she may also be, but for her is. And what girls are simply just taught is that like it's sacred. Like you
save
need
it for marriage. Yeah. Like,
and that was I feel like had we actually waited until marriage, then we would have been really struggling. Mm-hmm. Like for sure. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I think it's just, you know,
because even in the first part, like in the first couple, and like you just said, it's an ongoing conversation. Like there's still like. Not a comfort thing, but like you've been having sex less time than you weren't, basically. Right. So it's still technically fresh. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Like I think everyone's response to it is different because it was just kind of like, oh, like what am I supposed to do? Like how do I, I don't know, just be sexy, or like how do you just like certain things, like you just, and those are things that aren't taught. Like I didn't have those kind of chats with my mom before I got married, like, or before I started having sex, like, but specifically before I got married, because I feel like my mom wouldn't be talking to me about that before I got married. But like the
opportunity never
never came. Or like just in general, it's like, how do you learn as a woman to like embrace, when do you learn to embrace like your sexuality? Right. And I think that that's still something that I'm like, I have not fully grasped.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think that...
Because it's still like, this is awkward. Like, is this weird? Like, I don't know. It's just, there are certain elements of it that I'm still warming up to.
Right. I was going to ask you, do you think that, what's the quote? Like, do you think that you have okay, so there's a high and a low sex drive, I guess. Do you think you have a high one or a low one?
I would say like somewhere in the middle.
No, you got to pick high or low.
Babe, no, that's not fair. I don't think that's fair, because I wouldn't say my sex drive is low, but I also wouldn't say it's like super high.
I didn't say super high. I just say high.
Okay, I wouldn't say it's...
So is your gas tank full, or is it...
I think it's like halfway. Like, I don't think that that's a fair question.
Okay, so why do you say halfway?
Like, because it's like, I feel like during certain times of like my cycle... Like my sex drive is higher. Like when I'm ovulating, like I can tell when I'm ovulating. Right. I will also say like it kind of just depends on the time of day. Like at the end of the day, I'm usually tired. Right. And we've also had this conversation. Right. It's just like I would prefer like earlier in the day or in the morning. Like Cameron would prefer at night. So like that's kind of, he's more of a morning person in the sense of like getting up, getting into the day. And I'm more of like a
Relax.
lounge in bed and kind of like, just chill. So I feel like there are factors into like when your sex drive is peaking, because you just don't like, if I have a long day, like
right.
I'm clunked out by the night, you
Yeah.
know? So I don't know. I would say yours is pretty high.
Yeah, I would say mine is pretty high. I don't think
like I will say
I feel
this.
like that's
I will say this
okay.
because like for Cameron, he could be knocked out sleep, and I can be like, it could be like 2:00 in the morning, and I'll roll over, and he'll just be ready to go. For me, like that same sentiment does not apply.
But I don't even try that.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, I would be like, "Are you kidding?" like to me, that's not like fun. For you, that's fun. It's like, ooh, babe, what was you dreaming about? Like,
no, it's been a couple. No, that's different.
But
one.
I'm just saying, like that's kind of the difference, you know. Like, I would definitely say that you're always prepared.
Yeah.
For the most part.
I would say. Yeah, I would say so. I guess I was asking because it's more. I wasn't taking it to the when we have it or whatever. I think I was just trying to ask.
Sorry about that.
Well, whatever.
We here now.
Here now. But anyway, next question, because that's sex is just something you can keep getting better with time. It just does not. It's not boring. It's just like it's something you just, I don't know, desire to get better at. Mm-hmm. That's the best way I can describe it. We can have another conversation after the pod.
Okay.
Do you feel like we have good understanding of how and when we should bring up issues in our relationship? Why or why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think our timing is pretty good on.
Yeah. I feel like you could work on that a bit more.
What, when I need to say?
Yeah.
The
thing about you is that you are very straightforward when it's something that, like, you can voice your opinion. But for whatever reason, to me, you struggle with, like, just coming out and saying how you feel. You've gotten better, but that's still something that, like, I still have to kind of lead the way on those types of conversations.
Well, I think for
which
me
is odd because, like...
Yeah, no, I think for me, it's just, like, the timing. I feel like, I don't know, if we're sitting down here working or if, I don't know, you did something, it's just not the time. And then after a while, I just like, whatever.
But it's never the right time.
I know, but it's sometimes it's really not the right time. Like, I'm not about to interrupt our day because some stuff just isn't that deep. It's more so, I mean, like we were just talking about sex, for example. Like if I don't know, say like, oh yeah, you like literally for a week straight, you just nothing basically. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's happened other than this first trimester, but like for example, if that was to be the case, like that's maybe something I'll be frustrated on, or like I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
But it's not that big of a deal to.
Yeah.
Only because I know that you're gonna come around. I feel like if I didn't expect you to come around at some point, then.
But what do you mean by that? Like what's coming around?
Like at some point you're gonna want to fulfill whatever you need to get fulfilled, basically.
Oh, that's what you mean.
Yeah. I was just using sex as an example, but it could be whatever. Like at some point you're gonna be like, all right, cool. Like now, like all right, I'm glad she's happy, basically.
Yeah, but I still feel like. But I
still need to say something at some point,
because your whole energy shifts.
Yeah,
and but then it's like it's still a thing because I'm like, well, you're acting weird.
But then I have to try to teach myself to say something, not because I'm super direct. So when I say something, sometimes I'm not looking to hurt your feelings.
Yeah, and I know that.
Well, yeah, when I used to like just say what I say, then you'd be crying. I'd be like.
But sometimes when I cry, it's not really because you hurt my feelings. It's
Yeah,
just
but
because
it doesn't.
I just need to let those emotions out.
I'm like, I wasn't looking for tears, but
Yeah. So now I try to keep myself somewhat composed because
it turns into me like having to comfort you. Then you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just like
I'll just cry before or after, and then try to hold it together.
So I mean, I'm working on. That's something I'm for sure working on. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's another thing.
I mean, we don't really have a lot
but
of
we don't have any
disagreements,
disagreements
though.
like that.
I wouldn't say we don't have disagreements, but we don't really have like arguments. So it never really like we kind of just address things as they come up, like little stuff.
Yeah, but also it's so far in between of when something happens that I don't have enough time to practice either.
Not practice.
So I guess that's a good problem to have. Like I am definitely a creature of habit. So like if this was something often, which I'm glad it's not, then I probably would be better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean,
because it's like something like once, I don't know.
Every blue moon.
Yeah. So it doesn't happen enough for me to simply just have the courage to be like, you know what? I'm not even looking for these tears. Just one time out of 365 days. You're like,
yeah.
At no point is that ever worth it to me. So that's on my end. That's how I feel like whatever emotion you're going to show is never worth it to me because it's not what I know it's not what I'm looking for. So I have to change my whole attitude after that. So it's just like, well, I have a little attitude for a second, and I'm like,
no, it's
whatever.
not a second. It's like,
but to her, it feels like
eternity.
But like,
I'm like, oh god.
But it doesn't. It's not nothing. It's just like whatever. I'll process it and then
move on.
Yeah, and like we still kind of talk about it, but it's once I'm like
down off his little
whatever
attitude.
All right, going into boundaries, and it's kind of like this was kind of not a disagreement, but something that I had to bring up. We went out to eat one time. We were both working so much, and it felt like it was time at the time where, like you would be on your phone, and I was like, all right, bro.
I remember that.
Yeah, so it says
where were we?
We were just it wasn't even like it wasn't really a date. We were just going to get dinner. But I was like, we literally haven't
yeah, we
talked
were at Next.
at Hopcat.
Oh, at Hopcat.
Yeah.
Okay.
What boundaries can we make that will protect us from spending too much time on our phones?
I would say, I think a good one would be no phones in the bed. Like, at least 30 minutes when you get up, 30 minutes before you go to bed. It's tough, but I think it would be. I think that would be a good one to.
We can try that
out. And I would also think like during the workday, like having our phones on do not disturb or something, so that we're not just like answering a call in the middle of the day and like talking for an hour. It's like unconstructive, basically conversation. That could be reserved for like
something
later
else
in the day or while we're eating lunch or something like that.
Right.
But, trying to just kind of minimize frivolous time that is being spent scrolling. Because like we could do so many other things. Like we could play a game together. We could watch a movie. We could, I don't know, cook together or like go for a walk or things like that. I do feel like when we go for a walk, we're not on our phones.
Yeah, we're not on our phones to go for a walk. That's our most freeing time ever.
Right.
Yeah. But I think what happened at dinner one night was, it's not that she's on her phone. It's more so that when Erin is in her phone, she don't hear nothing you saying. So like, I'm like, well, I'll just sit there and just, I don't know, look at one of the 1,000 TVs in here, which I have no problem with. But sometimes I'm like, all right, we haven't talked. Or like, I don't know, just simply said hi.
Yeah.
So I think that's more so what it was. Like you will, like you still do that, but just in general, like that's your thing. You can't multitask at all. So she'll be on her phone and she'll be like dead silence. Like this is what I'm hearing, nothing. But she'll be looking at something. And I'm like, hello? Are you there? So yeah, imagine how that is like sometime in person. Like that's more so.
And I get it. Yeah.
That's what I was more so like, bro, like you either can text and talk to me at the same time, or put your phone down, basically. Yeah. So that's more so what that was.
Yeah. What boundaries do you think we could set? And also that would be a good one too. Like when we're out to eat or on a date, like we should just not even have our phones out.
Yeah, sometimes it's cool depending on what it is or kind of reading the room. Mm-hmm. I think that's what it is. It's reading the room. But date nights, we're not on our phones.
Really on our phones.
Yeah, no date night, I wouldn't say. But because that was just a random, like, we need to go eat. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, it's 8:00 at night. Like, we don't have no more to be on our phones at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and we haven't seen each other all day.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess we have, but not
like for real.
Yeah, we ain't been in each other's faces. But, so I don't know. I don't know. I think it would be easy for me to not to just be on my. Sometimes I'll be on my phone because you be on it.
Same.
I'm just saying.
Like Cameron, he'll be on his phone. He might not be texting, but he'll watch podcasts day in and day out. Like
you working.
I know, but I'm just saying, like that's still considered like consuming content.
But you gotta admit, when you walk into a room, I pause it. Just like you was bouncing on the ball downstairs, I was watching you two while I was eating breakfast, and I paused it because you wanted to do your
workout,
your little belly workout, or whatever. Like I be conscious.
Yeah,
I don't be ignoring you.
I feel like I'm conscious too, though.
Yeah, sometimes.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes, definitely worse. I would say definitely worse than me, for sure.
He thinks, but I don't know.
For sure.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll be more mindful.
I'm not tripping. I was just saying at the dinner spot.
Yeah.
I don't care otherwise.
Yeah, at dinner, it's like definitely unacceptable.
Last question. And this is pertaining to where we are now in life. Mm-hmm. And we've had this conversation before we got pregnant multiple times. But if we were unable to get pregnant naturally, would you be open to fertility treatments such as IVF or surrogacy, or just simply like accepting the fact that you can't have a baby, bear children?
Yeah, we have had this conversation. I would be open to trying. If I was trying like IVF.
Oh, okay.
Surrogacy, there's nothing against it, but I just don't think that would be the route I would prefer to take. That would be like an ultimate, like last resort.
Right.
I would definitely give myself some time to really like pray and just like, I think it depends on how long the journey is. Like for the first few years, if we have been trying and nothing was working and I was really just, okay, I'll say this. If it was a year that went by that we were trying and nothing was happening, we weren't getting pregnant, then I would probably be like, you know what? I'm just going to try to not think about it and just have fun and just live life and see what happens. Because I do think a lot of times the stress of trying can be also like a part of you not conceiving. And then if a few years went by of us like just really not trying, then I would start to think about IVF. Like I know that the doctors say like if you don't conceive within a year, then you should go see a fertility specialist to just make sure everything is fine. And for some people, they can be totally fine and just nothing catches in a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would really like believe before I started to like introduce other treatments, like really pray about it. I feel like that would be something that we would really have to be like on the same page about. But after like a few years of trying and nothing happening, I would start to become open to at least trying IVF.
Okay.
And then, or IUI, which is another thing.
Yeah, you have announced that one to me before.
Okay, well, IUI or IVF.
Well, you can explain that later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if that didn't work, then maybe surrogacy. I don't know. I don't know if we were pressed enough about kids. I mean, we both want kids, but like, I don't know if I would just be like, okay, well, now I have to get a surrogate. You know, like it would have to be very, very, very extreme. For me
this is a question that I also asked Aaron. This is why we were married though, because I became knowledgeable about one, how hard it is simply to just get pregnant, but two, that there is all these different reasons as why someone can't get pregnant. So I just straight up asked him like, I didn't think that we wouldn't be able to, but because I'm hearing all this stuff now, I'm like, so if we can't have a baby, is that gonna like basically is this gonna jack stuff up? Like, or how are you going to I don't know, how are you gonna take it? Because I told her, I was like, if that's not in my card, I basically said if that's not in my cards, I can accept it basically.
Yeah. Yeah, we both said that.
Yeah, well, I'm saying you also agreed.
Yeah.
Once I just kind of asked, because I'm like, I don't want to wait. Just like all like the point of asking questions, I don't want to wait until we're in the space, and then it's like,
yeah, because you really don't know until you're starting to try to have kids,
yeah,
whether or not you can have kids.
But this is why like, I mean, we have some friends who actually taught us a thing. Like they got all these different tests before. They're not like trying or anything, but they know that when they do try, like
they have to go the IVF route.
Yeah, but it's because they got
like genetics.
Yeah, they got tested. I'm like, oh, we need to go. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
So and it just kind of tells you how ill prepared and that's something that as becoming a parent, like I just want to be able to prepare my kids for stuff like life lessons like that. Like if you want to have kids at some point, you should know this now, basically, like even before you even get to this point. So the fact that I had zero idea about any of this I feel like it's a concern. Like, you know, and that's kind of why I asked the question, because one, I didn't even know that it was impossible. That basically it's a
slimmer chance of getting pregnant than not
getting pregnant. So when I found that out, I was just like, oh, maybe I need to ask her.
It's a miracle to get pregnant.
Yeah, I'm like, I need to ask her if she can't get pregnant, then what? Like, is this going to basically like deter your entire life? Yeah. Because some people, and there's nothing wrong, but some people do, like they have looked forward to this kid moment for their entire lives. And even as blessed as we are with having a kid, I can't say that I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm just going to basically like give up on life because I can't. And that's kind of the conversation that we had because of what I began to learn about how hard it is to get pregnant. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I think too, like there are so many things that you can, I won't say so many things, but like there's a lot of people who I know, other influencers who went like the holistic route and, you know, went to holistic doctors and got on all these herbs and like tried to balance their hormones and then they conceived. And it's just like, I think really if you believe like, okay, God put this desire in my heart, like I want kids, then it will happen for you. Like it might look different, but like you can.
I think that's the biggest thing is comparing journeys to someone else's. And I think that's one of the biggest things, which can stress you out because you might look at someone that you could look up to or even a sibling and you're like, well, shoot. Yeah. They ain't had no issues. Like it's not really about them, it's about you and your journey. So that's also something that I had to understand when it comes to this specifically. It's just like your journey is gonna look different from everyone else's, no matter how you slice it.
Like, for sure.
So no, I think that was
well, let us know if you've asked your spouse
any of those questions. 5 questions. This was kind of a longer one, but yeah, I don't know. These are some good ones to ask. I'll add the link of like I think it's like 100 questions or 50 questions, something like that you can ask your spouse before getting married or even while you're married. Because these particular questions we didn't ask, we asked something like them. Yeah,
we've had conversations, but maybe not those direct questions. And I think there's no question that you should be scared to ask before or during marriage. Like you should feel comfortable enough with that person to ask, because if it's a concern, it might come back up.
Or if it's a potential concern, like everybody has the potential to have any of these concerns.
Yeah. Like, so it's just like ask the hard questions before before you have to ask the hard questions.
Try to get ahead of it.
That's the easiest route to take.
If I was to give any advice, definitely get ahead of the game.
Yeah, get ahead of the hard stuff as much as you can. I mean, it still might come up, but at least you feel somewhat prepared.
Yeah, it's not that it won't happen. It's more so how you've prepared for something to happen.
Yeah.
You know, like
yeah,
at
it's
least
not like it's not gonna still be difficult to navigate.
yeah,
It's just
you talking
like,
about it doesn't mean like, oh no, this won't happen now. No, it happens to the best of us, whatever the case may be. But it's more so about like, oh, I've talked about this before. We talked about how we would handle the situation. Are you still going to be maybe emotional towards something? Absolutely, it's 100% probably guaranteed, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
But more so how you react after that short moment of emotions.
Just having.
And when I say short, it's just whatever time you need to get through that.
Yeah. So okay.
Yeah. So if you rock with me, then you rock with us. I hope you enjoyed this this podcast. This was a good one. I feel like we'll answer more of the different questions later on.
Yeah, maybe when we run out of topics, we'll do this.
Yeah, this is kind of one of those like, oh yeah,
what should we talk about? Also, if you guys have questions for us, leave them in the comments. I want to do a Q&A, like from you guys though.
Okay, yeah.
So leave them in the comments, or you can email us. Cameron will put the email address in the description and the channel notes. I mean, in the podcast notes if you're listening, or you can DM us at Sips of Success Podcast.
Yeah, we're gonna do a Q&A. Next episode is 25, so maybe we should do a Q&A for that.
Okay.
Just because we're 25 episodes in, I feel like even for me, just alone, I feel like that's a monumental moment.
It is. It's a big deal.
Like, yeah. So, episode 25, we'll do some questions, which is next Monday. We'll get those questions all through this week, and yeah.
Lovely.
All right, we'll see you guys on the next one.
Take a nap.
Oh, babe, y'all be easy.
Bye. You didn't say if you rock with me, you rock with us.
I did say it, but then you started talking about the questions thing. I had said it already.
Oh, well, say it again.
And we're back. If you rock with me, then you rock with us. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.